Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Intuitive Conversations. I'm Chantelle Neufeld.
I'm Tamara France.
And today we are talking about life is in the transitions. We both recently read a book. Dun, dun, dun. Life is in the transitions.
Author Bruce Feiler.
Yes. There we go. So take it away. What did you think of the book when you read it?
I thought it was a wonderful book, like just so much food for thought and talking about. And basically what the book is Bruce Feiler talked to, I don't know how many people, over 200? I can't remember.
A lot. It was hundreds, yeah.
And had them tell him their life stories. And the book is really all about how we go through transitions throughout our lives. And, we're always looking for life to stabilize, to get to the point where we say, now I've got it right, now I can live. But really, life is in the transitions. Made me think of that lyric from John Lennon, life is what happens while you're making other plans.
That is so true.
Just the amazing stories, though, and the things that people go through and survive and thrive. And he just kind of develops a map for going through life transitions.
Yeah, he noticed a lot of similarities with all of the hundreds of people that he interviewed. Yeah. And did you see like your story or your, life kind of play out before your eyes as you read the book a bit? Or I know they had some prompts at the end, like some journal prompts that were very helpful to me. And it kind of brought some clarity, like, oh, I was going through that then. Interesting.
Yeah, I think it was just so comforting to realize that everybody goes through these things, and you kind of go through life thinking you don't have it together because you don't know yet who you want to be when you grow up, or you haven't gotten to that place of stability where, financially you don't have to worry about things. You don't have your nest egg all, locked away in your bank account, or you're still going through work transitions, life transitions. And it was just comforting to realize this is par for the course in the times that we live in. And I forget the number, but he had a number for just the average number of life transitions that people go through. And it was, it's gotten higher and higher over the years. And this is just what
they overlap often.
Right. He talks about that, kind of the pile effect.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the words that he comes up with in the book that really spoke to me was lifequake.
Yeah.
So some transitions are just, things we expect to go through. You change jobs, you might move from one city to another. Relationships change, relationships fall apart, you get into new relationships, those kinds of things. But every once in a while, something hits that is just so unexpected and so huge and massive that you almost know immediately this is going to be a game changer. And he calls those events lifequakes. And it made me think of, I'm going to hold up the tarot card, the Tower, which is one of those cards, if you get that in a reading, it just signals there's going to be a sudden transition. And often because we sort of dug into the status quo and are not willing to kind of relax into the transition that life is bringing us. And so kind of the deeper that we clench in, the more of the stronger the lightning bolt is going to be that finally says, no, we're going to pry you loose. Life comes and says, in order for you to grow, in order for you to become really who you're meant to be, we have to just kind of crack open that little shell that you've put around yourself so that you can become something bigger. So here we are in a time of major world transition. I don't think that, I think it becomes clearer and clearer as time goes on that when you go through a pandemic, a world pandemic, things will change. We won't have the same world. We won't have the same life that we had before.
Mm-hmm. And which is people look at it as good and bad, right? Like, yeah, it's super scary, but at the same time, you know, there were a lot of systems that weren't working very well, and you know, just not sustainable, especially with, you know, all of the trees being cut down and all of, you know, animals, just nature in general, like it wasn't sustainable on the at the rate we were going and on the track that we
Right,
were on.
right. And we've talked so many times about the hero's journey, but that idea of things not being sustainable is when the call to adventure comes.
Mm.
You might even be living a life where everything's rolling along, you know, pretty much on autopilot. But even that isn't sustainable because there isn't growth in that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we've come here to be heroes, you know, we're not here to sort of sit on our butts and drink coffee all day.
Although we might have to do that for the next month. No.
That's right. You know, and sometimes that's actually a good thing when your life is, you know, when you're going through this, the coffee, for me, the coffee time is an anchor, right? I look forward to
Yes.
my coffee time every day after work because that sort of gets me through all of the madness.
Yeah, and wasn't that something mentioned in the book too, that like rituals, like having something like that is, you know, was very helpful to people.
Right. Yeah, those anchor points.
Yeah.
Um, I read an article too that said that during the COVID time, a lot of people have found meaning in new rituals.
Mm-hmm.
And those rituals are kind of bringing us back to the things that are important, that we really value and cherish in our lives. So
Yeah.
for me, that time to be able to look forward to sitting down with Joel, my husband, and have that, well, mine's a latte. So my daily latte and just, you know, bringing back memories of Italy and happy things that we've done, and then talking about our day, we just reconnect to the errors in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Like there's good and bad in everything, and transitions are no different. Um, it does feel like a bit of a snow globe situation for the world, that it's like a snow globe that's being shaken upside down, and it's like, yeah, the snow will eventually fall to the ground and everything will get settled and there will be a new normal. It won't be the same as before, but while the snowflakes are falling, people can choose to stress out about it, which doesn't help that much, really. But it can't be helped
Yeah.
sometimes. But I really love that analogy you were telling me about. We have a similar, a favorite author, Kyle Cease, and he had that ice cube illustration. You want to elaborate on that a bit?
Yes. I've just been reading in my Kyle Cease book. For those who don't know, Kyle Cease is a comedian, had a very active, promising career going in stand-up comedy and with TV specials and movie appearances and so on. And he sort of put that all aside to redefine himself as a transformational comedian. You can find all kinds of his stuff on YouTube, and he's written books. The analogy that he made that's been so helpful for me in this time is just this idea of the ice cube versus water, and that our ego structures can kind of be thought of as individual ice cubes, and we're really sort of invested in that individuality and the structure of this is who I am and this is what my life is all about, and we cling to that, and yet we have the opportunity just to melt into the ocean and become part of something so much larger and more powerful. But it does mean that we have to stop the clinging. And so now going through this pandemic situation and just the life transitions that I'm in, when I find myself resisting or in a, you know, and you can feel that inside, just that feeling of resistance, kind of arguing with the universe about what is right now. And I sort of bring to mind that picture of the ice cubes, a beaker full of ice cubes. And do I want to cling to that structure, or do I want to just kind of soften and melt into the circumstances as they are and just see where that goes?
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't always, you know, sometimes that still feels scary because, let's face it, uncertainty is scary.
Yes. And we're all in the same boat. Like there's no one who has like all the answers.
Yeah,
Like this is the
yeah,
magic formula that will make you feel better. I mean, besides meditation and stuff, but and guided
yeah,
meditation. That helps
right.
me a lot.
Yeah, and I think meditation is one of those ways of melting the ice cube,
Mm, yeah.
where you just sort of surrender yourself and say, okay, I'm just going to be in the moment, listen to the silence, accept what comes up, let it move through me,
Mm-hmm.
non-resistance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a challenging topic, but I mean everybody has gone through transitions before, and when they have, growth has happened in their lives. At least for me, and I know for you. Um, I feel like we're here on earth to level up, like to raise consciousness, and how else can you do that by transitions and growth?
Yeah. If you think about it that way, really, you could see humanity as being on one large collective heroic journey.
Mm,
And we're all sort of contributing to getting us through the trials and tests and challenges to find the treasure, which is moving up to that next level of consciousness and awareness, and
mm-hmm,
realizing that we can become beings that have something more going on than just, me, and what I can get for myself.
mm-hmm,
It's really interesting. We were talking before we started recording about what's happening south of the border in the United States and this election cycle that they've just come through. And this is meant to be a transition period now from one administration to another, but you see the hanging on and the clinging and the looking to blame, and, really, it's a huge illustration of the lack of grace and the desperation that comes with trying so hard to cling, and not accepting that it is time to move forward, time to move on.
mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I'm thinking about parts therapy in relation to everything that's going on, and I've noticed a lot of, I don't know if either new parts or just reactivated parts that haven't been activated for a long time. And just knowing the whole idea behind parts like that, the way to do it right is to accept and have compassion and love those scared parts of us, those uncertain parts of us. um, like it's helpful to know that, because what is the alternative really? It's the resistance and the, you know that's when I
Mm-hmm.
think that's when it turns to panic, when we're like, oh no, there's a part of me that's surfacing, I don't like it, get it away from me, instead of reassure it, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. We also have been reading Tama Keys and
Mm,
her book, This Time I Dance, which is basically a book she wrote in transition from having a successful law practice and finding that that wasn't meaningful for her when she had always wanted to be a writer. And so she quit her law practice and went into this 11, 12-year transition where she basically waited tables while sorting out her life and, getting her writing career going. And now she's a life coach. Um, I forget where I was going with this. I had a point.
well, I was talking about parts before you started saying that, like about how to show our parts
Yeah,
compassion and instead of resisting them. And well, I mean, before we got on the call, we were just talking about how that book is like a huge transition in the hero's journey, and just how meaningful it was to you, what it meant to you, like how you could relate to that book.
yeah. And I don't know if it's her in this book or someone else who uses the term protective personality
Mm,
in place of ego.
mm-hmm.
It may not be
I
her,
like
but
that.
just that idea of, yeah, those protective parts of us that, we want to dance. The soul wants to dance. The spirit wants to dance.
Mm-hmm.
But the protective personality is so invested in being the ice cube and clinging to those structures that are familiar and that bring us acceptance, and, that kind of place us in the life that was prescribed for us by our parents, our society. So taking the leap is frightening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's normal. It's normal to have protective parts come up. Like they're there to help us. Like that's what humans have had all along. If there's something out of the ordinary, right, then you have to be able to take action if needed, right? And so not only reassuring those parts, but thanking those parts for doing their job well. You know, it just really takes the resistance out of life, and it feels better energetically in the body. Like energy can flow through the body when we're not all tensed up and resisting.
Yeah. I think so many of us grew up not attending to our bodies. I know for me, that's been work that I've been doing in the last 2 years and continue to do, is just knowing what my body feels. I don't have a body that lets me know when I'm overtired. I rarely get sick. And so the protective personality for me maybe has been that part of me that sort of has been like an anesthetic almost in the body, sort of keeping me from tuning in what's going on, what's my body telling me about whether this is what I want or don't want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I found that I was very disconnected from my body too. And it is very interesting learning about the body intelligence and like how you can ask not only yourself questions and then come up with answers that you didn't have before, or you can ask your body questions, and it's kind of like a pendulum effect where you lean a certain way for yes and you lean a different way for no.
Yeah.
That surprised me a lot, that you know, because the body is the subconscious mind, and so why wouldn't that be the case, that you could
Yeah.
consult with your body intelligence for answers?
I have friends who do various forms of muscle testing. And for me, I've never gotten to the point where I trust my body enough that it works for me. So that's been really instructive to me, is just to recognize the lack of trust that I've had in my body. And maybe that's partly about being an educator and being so used to just going to the mind as, you know, here's how I problem solve, is I puzzle it out, I think things through, and yet at the same time, loving to write poetry and just operating from that intuitive. I think that's where I channel that intuitive side of me, is in writing.
And it shows through your book and your blog. You're an excellent writer.
Thank you.
I just think that we were all given different gifts, and we all, I don't know, it's like things translate various ways. And even with being a therapist, like there's no one size fits all. Like there's lots of different tools, and different tools work for different people. And so I think rather than trying to make ourselves into something we're not, to kind of go with our gifts and lean into them.
And yet there's so much pressure to sort of be part of the normalized group of, I mean, I'm an educator, right? So there are certain set expectations about what you should be able to do or not be able to do as you move grade by grade through the system. There are expectations about what types of knowledge are valued and what other types of knowledge are not. And we sort of get compressed into those molds that the system has created for us. And then I think that sometimes that life quake comes a reminder that, no, you're actually here to be who you are as an individual. And like you said, you've brought certain gifts. You've come here with a particular purpose. And so, you know, you may be rolling along on autopilot, but that's not what you came here for. You needed a little bit of a reminder. And maybe as a human species, this COVID pandemic comes to us as a reminder that we're not being the species we came here to be. We've kind of pulled ourselves out of the whole chain of nature and somehow seen ourselves as something other than the ecosystems that we live in and that we sort of dominate.
We need each other, though. Like, we need nature. Nature needs
us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think in a transition, there's all kinds of opportunity to open up to new ways of seeing things, new ways of relating to ourselves and the world around us. But it does take that softening. We can't just stay in that ice cube form and dig in for all we're worth.
Yeah,
Because
it
I
doesn't
think that
work.
just makes it more painful, right?
Yeah. And people figure that out eventually, you know, like some people just keep fighting and fighting and fighting instead of
Right.
like,
And you can feel that around people. You can feel the energy of the clenching, right? Whether or not you're actually consciously aware of it and can articulate it to yourself, there's something in you that says, I feel this energy of just rigidness, and this is a desperation to hold on to what's familiar. And maybe it's helpful for me to remember that so that I'm less mental about people and less judgmental towards myself. Hey, we're going through a major transition. Compassion is called for.
And was it Brene Brown who said that isn't that interesting? Like that would be the response to things rather than what? No,
Yeah, to be able to take a stance of curiosity no matter what happens. That's a discipline.
Right? It doesn't
Especially
come
with ourselves.
naturally, because naturally it's what? No.
Yeah. I think there's a default that sort of goes into like a code red sort of.
Yeah.
If you're a Democrat right now, to see what's happening is like that the resistance of this is insane, this is crazy. And if you're a Trump supporter, to go into that space of same thing from another direction, but to take a step back and just say, look what's going on, isn't that interesting? That is a tough discipline, because so much of us is invested in whether life will continue the way we know it, or whether things will change and we have to adapt and adjust.
And also, isn't that interesting within ourselves? Like when different feelings and different parts arise, that we say, isn't that interesting too, instead of, what, get away, this is uncomfortable.
I can't believe I'm thinking this.
Yeah, exactly. I remember yesterday I was just like, am I in a movie? Like it feels like a horror movie a little bit, or it doesn't feel real when something is just so out of the ordinary.
I have to, reading that book was so comforting in the sense that you read some of the unbelievable stories and things people go through and the way they have to reinvent themselves. A politician who got caught in the what was that website where high profile people were sort of connecting with each other for encounters, there was a privacy breach and all these names were revealed, and he had a high profile career. People who were in accidents that changed them physically, disfiguring accidents, or they lost body movement or body functions, or
just think of that kind of transition. I can't imagine.
People who went through transitions in sexual orientation or gender, and I'm thinking, okay, so when you're going through something, you magnitude of it, and you feel like it's very isolating. You feel alone, and then you start reading these stories and realize everybody is going through something big at some point. And shouldn't that make us all just kind of look at each other and say, you're so heroic, you're still standing.
And that's what's going to pull humanity, the globe, that's what's going to pull us through, is kindness, respect for each other, compassion for each other. Like, even if we don't agree with the other person's viewpoint, we can still be like, try to understand, like, seek to understand.
And I think when we let the transition soften us up a little bit, we talked before about rituals. I think we start realizing how little we need actually to be happy, to be content in life. Those little anchor points that make life meaningful, just connecting with the people that we love. having a bit of
things that are,
coziness and comfort around us.
yeah, the priceless things, the things
Yeah,
money can't buy.
yeah.
Those are the important things. That is so true. So true. But anyways, I believe that we're around our time frame that we set out. So
Okay, so
any
hi.
last?
Well, I just want to say a highly recommended book, and anyone who wants to get a taste of him can go on Inspire Nation on YouTube, and just listen to the interview with him. Bruce Feiler on Inspire Nation was actually how we happened onto his
Yeah,
book.
you watched it. You sent it to me. I watched it. I ordered the book. I read it. I gave you the book. It was like,
Right, back
yeah,
and forth. There's so much richness there for thought and discussion, and it's very. I just found it very comforting to realize
yeah. Just be
that
like, oh,
you're
this
not
is
alone.
okay. Yeah, it's okay. We don't have to have all our ducks in a row to be happy. Like,
Yeah. And I was going to say this too. The average transition lasting, what was it, 3 to 5 years?
a long time. Yeah.
Which, when I think about it, makes me realize that I was diagnosed with cancer almost 3 years ago to the day.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
still in that transition.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still finding out who I am post cancer journey and
Mm-hmm.
how that transition has changed my life. It's ongoing. So
Mm-hmm.
let's all be gentle with ourselves as we're going through personal and wider level transitions.
Mm-hmm. And find what works for you.
Right?
All right. Well, then we will say goodbye for now, and till next time, keep following your heart song.